Some choices don't just... And then there are the weekends. Weekends used to be family time. Now the guys are coming overtime. Adam's escape hatch, his reset button. Like clockwork, every Saturday or Sunday, his three best friends show up, Mark, Theo, and Dylan. They've been his crew since college, almost like an extension of him. They know the stories I've heard 100 times. They know where he hides the extra beers. They know exactly which chair is his. Mark's the smooth one. Always has a story, always knows how to land a joke, always smirking like he's in on some secret. Theo is quieter, softer spoken, the kind of man who listens more than he talks. There's this steady calm about him that makes you want to lean in. And then there's Dylan, the clown, loud, playful, always ready with a one-liner or some ridiculous impression that has everyone doubled over. When they're around, Adam becomes this different version of himself. He laughs harder, talks more, makes eye contact, gets animated telling stories. I watch him from the doorway sometimes and think, who is that man? Where does he go the rest of the week? And me, I play hostess. I refill bowls of chips. I bring out drinks. I wipe down counters. I laugh at jokes and ask how work is going and listen to the same old stories like they're new. I smile. I nod. I make sure everyone feels welcome. Inside, I feel like a ghost, walking in and out of their night like background noise. It didn't used to be that way. In the early years when Sophie was little and everything still felt new, I used to sit with them, play cards, talk trash during board games, actually feel like part of the group. Back then, Adam would reach for my hand under the table or kiss my cheek mid-conversation. Back then, they didn't just look at me as Adam's wife. I was me, but somewhere along the way, Adam retreated into work, into screens, into himself, and I drifted quietly into the background. The group changed in subtle ways I can see now, looking back. I became the person who handed out napkins while they debated scores and stats. I became the one who stood up to clear the plates while they opened another beer. And in the middle of that slow disappearance, I started to notice things I hadn't let myself notice before. The way Mark's eyes sometimes lingered a little too long when he thought I wasn't paying attention. The way Theo would ask me softly, "How are you?" and wait those extra few seconds for a real answer, even if I always gave him the safe one. The way Dylan's jokes seemed aimed at me more than anyone else, like he was trying just a little harder to make me laugh. They'd watched our family for years, seen Sophie grow, heard the tension in Adam's voice when he brushed me off, noticed the way I'd start a sentence and he'd talk over me. Nobody said anything, but it was all there in the way their eyes slid away at certain moments. And I started feeling something, not for one of them in particular, but for the way their attention made me feel like I hadn't completely vanished. I started putting on lipstick on Saturdays again, nothing dramatic, just a soft color that made my face feel a little less tired. I pulled an old pair of earrings out of the drawer one weekend and put them on before they arrived. When I caught my reflection that afternoon, I told myself, it's just nice to look put together. But I knew I was hoping someone would notice. They did. Not all at once. Not in some dramatic, obvious way. Just in tiny, almost forgettable moments. Nice dress, said casually as I walked past. You always spoil us, tossed out with a smile that lingered. A hand brushing my wrist as a glass was passed from one person to another, a laugh that lasted just a touch longer than the joke deserved, a glance held 1 second too long before looking away. Adam didn't see any of it, or if he did, he didn't react. Maybe he trusted me completely. Maybe he trusted them. Maybe he just didn't care enough to notice. The loneliness sharpened into something else, something restless and hungry and reckless. It was like being starving at a table full of food you kept insisting you weren't interested in. I told myself I wasn't doing anything wrong, that it was just harmless, just attention, just a feeling. But feelings grow if you feed them. It happened on a Saturday that began like dozens before it. The grill was going in the backyard. Music played low from a Bluetooth speaker. Bottles clinked. The dog wandered in circles, hoping someone would accidentally drop something. Sophie was in her room, headphones on, lost in some animated series, the glow of her screen lighting her face. It was our unspoken routine. Whenever the guys came over, she tucked herself away, and I floated between the kitchen and the patio. I was at the counter slicing vegetables when Adam came in, his phone pressed to his ear. His forehead was tight, the way it always was these days when work called. He didn't look at me at first, just paced, listened, sighed. Finally, he covered the mic with his hand and said, "I've got to go. Something's blown up at the office. I'll be back later. Don't wait on me." I opened my mouth to say something, ask how long, ask if he really needed to go, ask if we could talk for 5 minutes before he left, but before I could, he was already grabbing his keys. He kissed the air near my cheek, said, "Tell the guys I'm sorry," and walked out. The door clicked shut. A few seconds later, the car engine started. The sound faded down the street and left the house humming with a strange, hollow quiet. I stood there with the knife in my hand, staring at the back door. In the yard, I heard laughter. Mark's loud and easy, Theo's quieter, Dylan shouting something about the grill. Life kept moving like nothing had shifted. I wiped my hands on a dish towel, smoothed my dress, inhaled, and stepped outside. I wish I could say what happened next blindsided me, that I had no idea where the night was heading. But if I'm honest, some part of me had been inching toward this for a long time. A slow slide rather than a sudden fall. I brought out the platter. Mark took it from me, flashing that familiar grin. "What did we do to deserve you, huh?" he joked, setting the tray down. Adam's punching above his weight. I laughed lightly, letting it roll off. It was the sort of line he'd tossed out before, but this time he didn't just laugh and turn away. He stepped a little closer. His voice dropped. "Seriously, Lena, if he doesn't appreciate you, someone else will." My name in his mouth like that, it felt different. It wasn't just the words, it was the way he said them. Steady, confident eyes locked on mine like he was testing how far he could push before I pushed back. I forced a playful eye roll, moved away, tried to file it under harmless, but the air shifted. I felt it like a temperature change. Theo went quiet after that. He barely met my eyes the rest of the evening, answering my questions with short, careful sentences and spending a lot of time looking at the ground or his drink. Dylan watched me more than usual. Not in a gross way, just focused, like he was seeing something new and wasn't sure what to do with it. Later, I was clearing the table, stacking plates, wiping crumbs into my hand. Dylan stepped beside me to help. Our fingers brushed as we both reached for the same glass. Simple contact. Innocent enough, but he didn't pull away right away. He let the moment hang there for one extra breath. Then he cleared his throat and grabbed the glass, and we both pretended nothing had happened. That night, in bed beside Adam, who'd come home late, mumbled something about a long day, and fallen asleep with his back to me, my mind replayed every look, every word, every small touch. The way Mark's eyes had dipped, the tightness in Theo's jaw, the hesitation in Dylan's hands. And the strangest part? I didn't feel guilty. I felt awake, like some part of me that had been hibernating suddenly opened its eyes. I didn't do anything that night except think. But in my head, I crossed lines over and over. I imagined scenarios that made my stomach twist and my heart race. I pictured Mark backing me against the counter while the house was quiet, Theo closing the kitchen door and saying my name slow, like a question, Dylan catching my wrist and pulling me into his lap when no one was looking. I hated that it made me feel alive. I hated that the attention felt like oxygen after years of holding my breath. Adam hadn't cheated, he hadn't lied, he hadn't shouted or broken things or disappeared without explanation. He just slowly stopped showing up, stopped seeing me, stopped reaching for my hand, my thoughts, my body. I felt like an appliance, useful, familiar, taken for granted. So what did that make me, lying there next to him with all those images spinning my mind into places I'd sworn I'd never go? Days turned into weeks, and everything looked the same on the surface. Adam's sock still ended up on the floor. His phone still stole his attention. The dishwasher still hummed at night. Sophie still asked for snacks at the worst possible moments. From the outside, nothing had changed. Inside, I became hyper-aware of the guys when they came over. Mark's arms when he rolled his sleeves up, the way the veins on his hands stood out when he lifted a cooler. Theo's voice when he spoke low, along with the way his gaze softened during those rare moments our eyes met. Dylan's easy laughter filling spaces Adam used to fill. I'd catch myself staring into the bathroom mirror, inspecting my own reflection like I was a stranger. My face fuller than in my 20s, tiny lines from years of worry and sun, my body softer in places that used to be firm. Curves that once felt like a promise now felt like a question no one answered. Sometimes I'd lean closer to the glass and think, do they see me? Really see me? Why doesn't he? Guilt would hit hard then. I'd shake my head, splash, cold water on my cheeks, close my eyes, remind myself, you're a wife, a mother, a woman who made vows. But like waves sneaking back onto the shore, the fantasies returned. Persistent, quiet, patient. I told myself I was just flattering my ego, that a little attention never hurt anyone, that it was all in my head. And then I stopped just thinking about it and started feeding it. One weekend, I changed my dress 3 times before the doorbell rang. I ended up choosing one I hadn't worn in years. It wasn't flashy, but it hugged my waist in a way that made me feel noticeable. The neckline dipped just slightly lower. I put on perfume I hadn't used since date nights were still a thing. I ran a brush through my hair slowly, carefully, until it fell just right over my shoulder. When I walked out into the backyard with a tray of drinks, I felt their eyes on me. Mark looked first. His gaze flicked down, then back up. A slow smile tugged at his mouth. Dylan let out a quiet, playful whistle and wiggled his eyebrows. Well, look who's trying to show us up, he teased. Theo's reaction cut deeper. His eyes met mine, widened just a fraction, then darted away. He shifted in his chair, cleared his throat, and busied himself with a coaster that didn't need adjusting. I didn't say anything flirty, not at first. I just gave a little more of myself away in the spaces between. A longer smile, a hand that rested on someone's shoulder a second longer than necessary as I walked past. Knees that didn't pull back right away when they brushed another pair under the table. It was all technically deniable. You could have replayed the night on a security camera and argued I hadn't done anything. But we all felt what was happening. A week later, I pushed things another inch. Adam texted that he'd be late. Big project, needed to stay at the office. He said, "Tell the guys to enjoy without me." I read the message 3 times. Enjoy without me. It felt like a permission. Slip no one had actually written. The guys showed up anyway. We ordered pizza, opened a second bottle of wine after the first disappeared faster than I anticipated. The jokes got looser, the laughter easier, the room warmer. I was on my second glass, that soft, floaty place where everything feels a little less sharp, when I heard myself say it. "We should do something insane one day," I blurted out, half laughing. "All of us, just once." The second the words left my mouth, the air changed. It's hard to explain if you weren't there. The sound of the TV, the clink of ice, the hum of the refrigerator, all of it faded into the background. The room felt smaller, thicker. I tried to laugh it off, wave it away as some impulsive, wine-fueled comment. But nobody laughed right away. Mark tilted his head, studying me. His smile faltered just enough for me to see the seriousness underneath. Dylan's eyes flicked from my face to Theo's. Theo stared at the table, his knuckles white around his glass. The silence wasn't awkward, it crackled, like a room just before lightning strikes. Finally, Mark broke it with a laugh that sounded a little too loud. He pointed his beer bottle toward me. "You," he said, "are trouble. Adam has no clue." The spell shattered. The TV felt loud again. Dylan jumped in with a joke. Someone changed the song. I stood up to gather empty plates like it was any other night, but we all knew something had shifted. A line had been drawn, even if we were still pretending it wasn't there. I went to bed buzzing, not in a fun way, in a charged electric way that made it impossible to relax. Adam was already asleep, one arm under his pillow, breathing deep. I lay on my back, replaying the scene, the silence, Mark's words, and then my phone buzzed on the nightstand. A message from Mark. 3 words. "Did you mean that?" I stared at the screen, my heart thudding in my throat. There was still time to undo this, to laugh, to say, "Relax, I was just messing around." I could have shut it down right there. Instead, I typed back 1 word. Maybe that's all it took. Things escalated quicker than I ever expected after that. Not in public, not where anyone could see, but in the space where secrets live. Private messages, pauses at the door, glances that carried more than jokes ever could. Adam had a 3-day work trip coming up. Same city he always traveled to, same hotel, same schedule, same bored texts about meetings and bad coffee. He packed like he always did, methodically folding shirts while answering a work call, asking me where his charger was, kissing my forehead on his way out the door like everything was as it should be. He didn't ask what I'd be doing while he was away. Didn't suggest a movie night with Sophie. Didn't say he'd miss us, just, "I'll call you when I land." And then the sound of the suitcase wheels rolling out, something inside me snapped. I could blame him for that final push, his distance, his inattentiveness. But the truth is, the choice was already growing inside me. His trip just removed the last excuse not to do what I'd already considered. I didn't invite them in a group chat. It wasn't some organized thing. I messaged Mark first, then later, Dylan. Hours after that, Theo, separate little conversations that all drifted in the same direction. I told myself they'd say no, that someone would laugh and pull me back to reality, that at least one of them would be a better person than I was being. But 1 yes turned into 3. I didn't cancel. The night arrived like any other. Sophie was going to stay over at a friend's house. Her bag was packed with pajamas and her favorite stuffed rabbit. I kissed her cheek in the doorway and told her to have fun. She skipped down the steps without looking back. The house was suddenly too quiet. I lit candles, not because I wanted romance, but because I didn't want to sit in bright, honest light. Shadows felt kinder. I changed my outfit twice before settling on something simple that felt too revealing and too modest at the same time. Mark showed up first, then Dylan, then Theo, last one in, moving slower than usual. The 3 of them stood in my living room like they weren't sure where to put their hands. I poured drinks with fingers that shook, tried to fill the silence with pointless questions. How was traffic? Cold out, huh? Nobody said the thing we were all clearly there for. In my head, I'd always imagined. If I ever crossed this kind of line, I'd feel daring, in control, powerful even. But standing there, surrounded by 3 men I'd known for years, I felt hollow, detached, like I was watching someone else walk into a disaster. I sat down first, legs crossed, heart pounding. Mark sank onto the couch beside me. Dylan took the other side. Theo hovered, leaning against the wall, arms folded, jaw tight. I looked up at him and whispered, barely audible, "It's okay." It wasn't, but he took a step forward anyway. What happened after that is blurry on purpose. I don't replay the details. I don't catalog who moved first or who said what in the middle of it. I only remember fragments. A hand in my hair, a mouth on my shoulder, fingers fumbling with fabric, my own heartbeat in my ears, drowning out rational thought. It wasn't graceful or romantic or like anything in movies. It was messy and rushed and charged with years of unresolved longing and unspoken resentment. It was a collision, not a connection. For a brief sliver of time, I did feel something like power, like being the center of attention after years of standing at the edges. I felt wanted. I felt like a woman whose body hadn't been touched in a long time and was suddenly being remembered. Then, as quickly as it started, it was over. We were left in the heavy quiet that follows a storm, breathing hard in a room that felt too small. Nobody spoke. Even Mark, who always had a joke ready, stayed silent. Dylan sat up first, pulling his shirt back over his head without looking at me. Theo stared at the ceiling like if he focused hard enough, he could rewrite what had just happened. I pulled the blanket over myself, not because I was cold, but because I felt exposed in ways that had nothing to do with skin. And then through the hallway, I heard it. "Mom?" Sophie's voice, soft, sleepy, confused. My entire body went cold. "Mom," she called again, a little louder this time. I shot upright, clutching the blanket to my chest so hard my knuckles ached. The guys went still. "You know that rigid, don't move, and maybe we'll disappear stillness." "That 1 second, honey," I called out, my voice cracking halfway through the sentence. "Go back to bed, okay?" Silence stretched from the hallway. I heard her feet shuffle on the wooden floor. "I came home early," she murmured, more to herself than to me. I couldn't see her from where I sat. I didn't know exactly how far she'd come, how much she'd seen, or if she'd only heard muffled voices and movement. All I knew was my daughter had called for me while I was lying tangled up in something I could never explain. After a few long moments, I heard her door softly close. Nobody said goodbye. There were no gentle exits, no careful debriefs, no whispered, "We'll figure this out." They got dressed in silence, avoided my eyes, and left one by one. Mark brushed past me without a word. Dylan paused at the doorway, his hand on the knob like he might turn around, but all he did was give a small, helpless nod before slipping out. Theo didn't look back at all. The door clicked shut 3 times. Then it was just me in a house that smelled like sweat and wine and something sour I could only call regret. I moved like a machine, gathered glasses, straightened cushions, sprayed cleaner on surfaces that were just as dirty as my conscience. I scrubbed like I was trying to erase the night with the smell of lemon chemicals. But no amount of wiping away smudges changed the fact that I'd crossed a line I could never uncross. The only thing I couldn't clean was the sound of Sophie's voice echoing in my head. The next morning, she barely looked at me. When I asked her about the sleepover at her friend's, because that's where she was supposed to have been all night, she shrugged and said it was fine, but she'd gotten homesick and her friend's mom dropped her off late. I asked what time. Her shoulders lifted. "I don't know. Late." She picked at her cereal and pushed it around the bowl more than she ate it. When I reached to smooth her hair, she flinched just slightly before forcing herself to sit still. It killed me. The silence between us hurt worse than any shout could have. Days trickled by, each one thick with unsaid things. Mark vanished from my phone, from my notifications, from my life. No text, no joke, no hey, about that night, nothing. He still came around when Adam invited the guys over, but if our eyes happened to meet, he looked away fast, enough to make my stomach twist. Theo sent one message. Just one. "That was a mistake. Please don't contact me again." I must have read that sentence 50 times, tracing each word with my eyes like it might change, if I stared long enough. Dylan messaged the day after that. "Can we talk?" I didn't answer. What was there to say? "Hey, thanks for helping me detonate my life." The weight of all 3 of their reactions pressed on me in different, excruciating ways. Then Adam came home. He rolled his suitcase inside, smiled in that tired way travelers do, and set his bag down. But there was something softer about him that night. He asked how we were, really asked. He brought out a small bag of gummy candies he'd picked up for Sophie and watched her eyes light up. He hugged her for a long time, swaying side to side in the living room. Then he walked over to me, slid his arms around my waist, and kissed me. Not a distracted peck, a real kiss, familiar, warm. It was so unexpected I froze. "I missed you," he said quietly. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell him he was too late, that he'd missed his chance to show up before I destroyed everything. Instead, I smiled and said, "I missed you too." My voice sounded small, even to me. That night, as we crawled into bed, he pulled the blanket up, then paused. He sniffed his pillow, brow furrowing. "Did you switch laundry detergent?" he asked. My heart stopped. I swallowed. "Yeah," I lied. "Thought I'd try a new one." He nodded, satisfied. "Smells nice," he said, then rolled over. The scent lingering in the fibers wasn't from detergent. It was from cologne, from hands, from bodies that should never have been in our bed. After that, life turned into something that looked normal from the outside and felt like quicksand from the inside. The more I tried to move, the more I sank. I smiled when I was supposed to, packed lunches, answered emails, went grocery shopping. On the surface, I was functioning. Inside, I was coming apart in quiet, private ways. Sophie stayed distant. She stopped asking me to help with school projects and started going straight to Adam. She'd sit closer to him on the couch, lean into his shoulder, laugh harder at his jokes. When I asked if she wanted me to braid her hair the way I used to, she muttered, "No, it's fine," and did it herself even when the result was lopsided. Every time she pulled away, something inside me cracked. Showers became the only place I let myself really feel. At first, it was just a few tears mixed with the water. Then, on some mornings, I pressed my forehead to the tile and sobbed, chest shaking, hot water unable to wash away the shame. I'd cry until the mirror fogged and my skin turned pink. I stopped lingering in front of mirrors. I brushed my teeth without looking up. If my reflection caught me by surprise, I'd glance away, unable to stand the sight of the woman looking back, the woman who had traded integrity for an hour of attention. I used to think of myself as the one who'd been forgotten in my marriage, the quiet victim of neglect, the one who suffered in silence while the person she loved slowly drifted away. Now, I didn't know who I was. Victim? Villain? I wish I could tell you there was some grand lesson that wrapped everything up in a bow, that I figured out exactly why I did what I did and how to fix everything I broke. But some choices don't end in tidy revelations. Some simply leave ruins you learn to live inside. Have you ever made a decision knowing as you were making it that you'd never be able to undo it? Felt that tight knot in your gut whispering, "Stop," while another voice said, "Just this once," and you listened to the wrong one because you were too tired, too hurt, too alone to care about the cost? I did, and now I wake up every day with one question sitting heavy on my chest. Is someone like me still redeemable? Not just in other people's eyes, but in my own. Can I ever look at myself again without flinching? Can I be more than the worst thing I've done? I don't have a neat answer. I'm still in the middle of it. I'm still paying the price in small, quiet ways. The hesitation in Sophie's hugs, the way my hand shakes when Adam reaches for me, the silence I slip into when his friends come over and barely meet my eyes. Maybe you've been where I am now. Maybe you've watched someone you love walk down a road like the one I chose. Maybe you're standing at the crossroads right this second, battling that same crashing wave of loneliness and craving. If you are, talk to me. Tell me what you think. Tell me what you feel when you hear this. Because your perspective, your story, your warning, or your forgiveness, whatever it is, might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. Maybe what I need to hear. Drop your thoughts, share what you've lived through. You have no idea how much your voice might matter to someone listening in silence. And if this story stirred something in you, if it made you look at your own life a little closer, made you pause before sending that message, or made you understand a choice you still hate yourself for, don't just let it pass through you and disappear. Share it. Let someone else hear it. There's always someone out there who thinks they're the only one feeling this way. There's a place here for stories like this, messy, complicated, painfully human stories where nothing is as simple as good person and bad person and hearts don't always do the right thing even when they know better, where we talk about the things people usually whisper about or bury or pretend never happened, because the biggest mistake in my story isn't just what I did, it's why I convinced myself it was the only way to feel alive again. People don't always cheat because they're cruel or careless. Sometimes they cheat because they feel invisible, because their hunger for connection has gone unanswered for so long that anything, even something destructive, starts to look like a lifeline. Because for one brief moment, being wanted seems more valuable than being able to look yourself in the eye. That's the lie.